Um, and then Mario is working on the IP thing, which is February. Did you end up?
So we have a meeting with BC tomorrow.
Okay.
And we have Myers in for a talk.
Yeah.
Anything else? They're probably gonna. They wanted to do joint Myers as well as someone from OTM, but I'll just push for Myers.
Yeah. Like in my email, I'd shared that I think they're like for them especially, there's a ton of value, so they're going to push on it, which I think is fine, and I think it's fine for people as well. But I think it's most useful if they're separate.
So like 30 minutes, 30 minutes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or like Myers covers the basics and maybe talks about what our thing is, and then OTM is there like, okay, if you're WashU IP, it's totally different. This is how it's different.
Okay.
Because otherwise, I feel like it's too hard for Myers to bring material and to try to coordinate with OTM.
He said he would bring us, the 30-minute presentation.
Yeah.
Last time.
Well, that's what I mean. He's got just like a stock thing, so
Yeah.
it's silly to like ask him to study up on OTM stuff.
Right. So I'll make sure I'll try to get Myers, and then if they want to do their OTM, I'll make sure that have overlap and just have them do the first 30 minutes and then someone else do
Yeah.
the office. Yeah.
Cool.
Does it matter if we pay? They would probably want to split food or something, food and drink. We did food last time, so we'll do drink this time or something like that.
Yeah, that's fine.
Are we allowed to? Yeah, bees. To buy a drink.
I think so.
What budget would you guys say was to set it up?
If you spend $500, I'd be surprised.
Yeah,
I think it's going to be 200 or something.
All right.
250.
I'll see what they spend usually on their events and do the same. Maybe
Yeah.
a little, actually more because we're bringing in a lot of people. Are we gonna make it like mandatory for teams?
Yeah, or at least one member from each
I think
team.
we should.
But I'll try, if you get like the information to me tomorrow, more or less.
4:30. I'm meeting with the
Okay, so yeah, I'll try to get it out to the teams tomorrow.
Alright.
One thing to maybe have hammered down, which would be really nice, is to have, like before we kind of talked about trying to set out the schedule to help Myers out even more as far as like have your claims done by this time and then submit them to Myers by this time. That way they can be, provisioned the night before demo day or whatever. But I think it would be worthwhile to communicate that already to teams.
Okay.
Because if it's like February 2nd, so our we were talking about having the pitch thing mid or
So
at the beginning of April.
pitch video.
So they have 2 months to start working. I mean, because it's always a busy time when they're trying to get.
Okay.
Right. So try to get them to send claims or the provisional
Yeah,
to him by earlier the better.
and you might also we usually offer him to give office hours as well, so that needs to be part of the equation.
The easiest way to figure this out is just to ask Myers, because we can basically backtrack from demo day and then get all the dates that we need.
Yeah. But I feel like we'd written all these dates down.
I don't know if we went as granular as having IP office hours,
Not that.
but we have
Demo day 21st of April. Go back now. Let me take this IP seminar on the 27th.
We have IP seminar on the 22nd for some reason.
Yeah, we could remove that.
Well, demo day is the 28th.
Yeah. Well,
Oh, so-
March 22nd.
have we nailed down?
I think it's maybe we can change that 22 date to if we can office hours with Myers to begin with, because that whole month is just trash because it's finals and quarters, and
You're talking about 22nd of March.
yeah, or whatever, the end of March. Or I would not even be against saying have your draft claims ready on the 22nd,
Okay.
because they're going to work on it the 21st, they're going to realize they have no idea what they're doing.
Yeah,
And then they're going to walk into Myers' office and ask him how to do it.
right. And it'd be good for him to have some days set aside for office.
Yeah, and then you can do the typical like turn it in, whatever.
Yeah.
And I'm sure Myers would be more interested in doing that as well. Does that seem reasonable?
Yeah, I
You
think that's
think that's a
reasonable.
It's
As far as-
not too early.
Yeah, what was the date you were thinking about?
So 21st of
March?
March.
Yeah, I think,
Well,
that's,
22nd.
I think that's great.
Tell them like it's
Yeah, no, I think that's perfect. And we can, if we want, we just need to hit on that date, February 1st, too, so that they know about it.
yeah.
As far as our demo day date, right now we still have those 2 days, kind of optional for it. One of
Oh, tentative is 28th.
the 28th or the 21st. I think we should do 28th. I'll be out of town the 21st, but still, I guess we're waiting on keynote.
Yeah.
Yeah, have you heard back from the Gates people?
I haven't recently. I talked to Gordon a bit, and I need to reconnect with him. Yeah, but rumor has it that he had like identified someone when he met recently, just before winter break. Well, rumor had he told Jeanette
Sweet.
that he had, but it might not be Bill or Melinda. But it might
I
be
mean,
someone.
regardless, that'd be really cool to have anybody from there. I think that'd be an interest. It'd just be an interesting person.
Yeah. Need to put that in note to self.
Yeah, keep me posted if there are updates on that. I can track other.
You guys talked at one point about like the CMO of Johnson Johnson. Has that progressed at all?
No, that's in a weird position because I'm waiting on a formal job offer.
Okay, yeah.
Kind of makes it awkward to simultaneously press him on coming to be keynote.
Okay.
The other thing that just kind of came up today is that so I went to an SBIR workshop the past 2 days put on by Harry or Arter.
Yeah.
Really great. First time he did it. It was awesome. I'm going to try to get the
It was a lady
slide.
from like Chicago.
So it's some like consulting firm, some SBIR consulting firm guy gave it, and like Harry is like paying for certain startups, or is paying for the consultancy to look at some startups' grant applications.
Yeah, so I think I think Erica is like connected with that firm.
What's it called?
We can if I
PPC or
remember right, so I went to that like in the fall, or at least one day of it, and the like PowerPoints were given to us via like some kind of box.
Right.
So it seems like we might just have to ask. It seems like they'd be fine for.
Yeah, hopefully they can. But I think the more important thing I was going to bring up is that I had chatted a bit with an advisor of MedLaunch there.
Who?
And so I forget his name, but he's the incoming president of Slims.
Oh, it's not the guy with the mustache.
Yeah,
Lee?
no, I'm not sure.
Okay.
He didn't have
Michael
a
B.
card.
It
I
could be
couldn't.
Joe Kraft.
So it wasn't Jim Kraft or Mike B.
Okay.
Because he talked about those guys.
Okay.
That's, I don't think, third person. And I was able to write them down, but I missed his name. He didn't have a card. Anyways, so I was talking to him a little bit, and he asked me a little bit, like, you know, it's the problem we're having at MedLaunch is teams, like, it's hard for people to work full time, so it's hard to be successful, blah, blah, age-old story. But afterwards, I kind of talked to him. I was like, hey, you're an advisor. Like, do you think it's reasonable that there are two organizations in St. Louis that do the same thing? And he's like, I was like, do you know where that might be? I was like, talked a little bit, and I was like, it's silly because Idea Labs is sponsored by WashU, but we're an independent nonprofit. And he had no idea. Then we started talking to Harry, so Harry hates that as well, who is an advisor of both boards. Harry's joining our board. So Harry's actually gonna like start working at trying to join the two.
And we kind of, I think I kind of dropped the ball early on setting up a meeting with Tom Malone, the current president. We missed that meeting. and then like we never reconnected. But I
Yeah.
emailed him a week ago trying to set up a time to have coffee, and I'll ping him again right now just to
Yeah.
hopefully.
Yeah, that would be reasonable.
Because I think we could get resistance if they feel like it's being pushed down upon them from.
Absolutely,
Alright,
absolutely. Yeah. So this was gonna, but yeah. So that would be great to kind of connect on the other side as well. But Harry's gonna be talking to, is it Grant Thomas, who's the tech transfer guy?
Graham Thomas.
Graham Thomas.
He's great. I like him a lot. He
He
likes us
also
a
has
lot.
been opposed to it being 2 separate entities.
Yeah. So according to Harry, like he was opposed because of some higher up decision or something. But
Were you
This- this-
were you there
this
for the?
meeting.
Who was there for the meeting where it was like Graham Thomas?
It was such an awkward meeting.
Yeah,
Quatrano,
Ralph Quatrano.
the dean of whatever at SLU.
Yeah, the vice president of like research affairs or something at SLU. Were you there for that meeting?
I can't
I
remember.
think you were. We were here in this room, I think.
Yeah.
That was just a really weird meeting a while back, but Graham Thomas.
Oh yeah,
was
that
there.
other dean. Yeah.
And there was just like this weird thing about SLU, quote unquote, not being ready for, like, it was just I really didn't even get what they were getting at, but it was something about SLU wasn't ready to quite play at this stage or something. But,
Yeah, I don't know. Regardless of the like changing reasons they have given in the past, hopefully something that's led by like, hopefully we can get really Harry to lead this, which will be really great because he certainly has a lot more weight than we do. But just something that came up that I thought would be interesting to share. Okay. Okay. The other stuff is that I just wanted to, I don't know how useful this is because of the lack of people. I'll probably have to post this on the groups, but I just wanted to communicate like some of the goals, generally strategically speaking, that like we had set as a summer, and just to kind of go through them, look at where we are, and look to see kind of like what we have ahead. And I need to pull up our annual report because that's where most of the stuff is. And then on the tails of that, like just wanted to really see what else you guys thought was there in response, whether some things are outdated or weren't done well enough or whatever. But let's see here. God, it's going to take 3 years to open up on my computer. So the first thing we had really made a conscious decision about was trying to get fewer teams that were bigger. Right, that was like a big thing.
yeah, so it failed on that end,
I don't.
guess.
Yeah, I
I
don't
mean,
know.
having few big teams or having fewer teams and having each of them be bigger?
Yeah, like try to keep the same amount. I think what happened in the end is I think we would just have 15 or 20 people less this year.
Yeah, I don't know if I necessarily think big teams are necessarily better. I think fewer teams might have been better, but I don't think we've been necessarily
Yeah.
more too thin. I don't know if we diluted talent at all. There are a few teams that I'm a little worried about, but I think in general, like the 14 like core teams, non-EWH, the majority of them are doing well and making progress better than last year's team.
Yeah. So I think another reason we did is just to make sure that your position wasn't too inundated. Do you think that's still true?
Yeah, we'll see how. No, I don't feel inundated.
Okay.
I think I've been getting out back to people quickly enough.
Like definitely, I think those meetings you have with Annalise and Josh, I think are super great. Like I'm really impressed that you keep those up, and I think those are like you wouldn't do them if they weren't useful. I think, but
Yeah,
I'm glad you're doing them for sure.
Yeah, I think having Mario, Josh, and Annalise kind of on board has helped a lot.
Oh yeah, and sorry, Mario. Yeah, of course. Yeah. So let's see. Notable team initiatives. So top of my list. So my kind of personal goal of my presidency was this corporate pathway thing, and it's been a little bit more hands off because I thought the development stuff didn't really fit with a lot of the action-oriented positions we had created, but I think it's started off well. We have a pilot that we're getting paid for, and the goal was to make money for Sling Health, and in our pilot year, we're making money, so it's a great start.
And do you feel? I'm curious. Do you think the people on the teams are getting a better Sling Health experience than the average participant? I kind of suspect they are, but I don't know what your thoughts are.
Do you in any certain regard are you asking, or just in general?
Well, at least for like the Centene problem, the kind of support in them giving that you guys claims data is kind of just a really interesting exposure, and it seems like having kind of you as someone that's been through it before probably helps them overstep some of the hurdles that other teams fall for. At the same time, I don't know if you feel like you're taking on a lot of things other teams are more evenly distributing out throughout the teams.
Yeah, so those were kind of the two things I was going to bring up, is that I think one thing of having them that close to another company is just or to the problem submitter is phenomenal, because one is that like we have someone we can like call up any time of the day and like they'll answer it. But two, like because they're paying us, they are actually like invested in the problem, and so they're like doubly motivated to answer our questions and to help us. It's like a classic contract agreement. So just in regard of having that, and then as a result, like this claims data, like you can put that straight in a business plan. Like that data is unheard of. Like the data we're talking about is they gave us all their claims data from the entire nation divided by every episodic group, which is like what illness it was rated under.
Awesome.
And so it's like we have primary market data of exactly how much people are spending in Medicaid, because Centene's the largest. So that's like completely unparalleled to anything we've seen before. I don't know how
real time, unlike best data or whatever it's called now, Part B national survey, where it's like 2008 is the most recent ortho data you can find.
Yeah. In terms of like my impact, like I don't know, I'd like to think I'm a little more experienced and can maybe lubricate the wheels a little bit, but I think that's great. I mean, it's like a design review panel in every single group meeting. So I think that's been better. The one thing that's just kind of been a challenge is it's definitely like me driving the progress continually. Like we have, like Daniel's a really great leader, but the other co-leaders have kind of, in a lot of ways, it's seen very similar to just general teams where the MBAs kind of drop off after month 2 in terms of their like aggression or like self-motivation and doing stuff. So I'm still trying to working hard on trying to keep them like franchised and leading it. It's hard to keep people progressing when they see a lot of progress on my end, So that's the one a little like challenge of like.
Yeah, it's easy to depend on. I would imagine it'd be easy to kind of depend on you to kind of drive things forward. And
a lot of things too, I'm trying to be. I don't want to like sound like an asshole, but like it would be easier for me to not tell them to do just do things myself, right? But like I'm working really hard on being pedagogic and like trying to give them stuff to do, and like it's the classic like 3 weeks you have to remind them the same thing, and like that's just going to be a challenge for that position. So
yeah, it's hard to say if those people would be more motivated on another team.
Yeah.
Anyways, what's your next?
So the other thing was goal had set was in like institutionalizing policies and procedures. So this was about like trying to rely as little as possible on the oral tradition of Sling Health, but I think in a lot of ways we've done a lot of damage. So like the orientation materials were really super formalized. Ted did a really tremendous job on the financial stuff on every front. Like the sales tax and the
still open-ended on that.
Yeah.
Which is probably going to arc through the rest of the semester.
Cool. So that's already an awesome start. the legal stuff we've really hammered down. The leadership roles, like that's something Ramin worked really hard on, that we spent a lot of time this summer, and I think we need to like go back and make sure the stuff like us as managers, well, Ramin as managers, that we're still following that stuff
And
is important. But
along with that, something that's becoming really clear is all of the like little day-to-day things that have like I've just learned by doing that, you know, I don't think it's reasonable to expect that like we were gonna sit in the room for 5 hours and everything was gonna be like laid out of what I needed to do and when I needed to do it. I think that that's something that we could emphasize more in the second half of like, all right, so when Stephen Munda's not here anymore, like what are all the little things that he learned, and just have like a 10-page handbook that like, all right, here's the first thing you read when you step in the door, and this is at least going to get you like 80% of the way there. It's something that I have Matt doing. It's something that Rosie kind of started, but didn't really do a whole lot of.
Writing down these.
Yeah, just like all these little nuggets of like.
That's great.
You know, let's spend 15 minutes at the beginning of our meetings and like download within the last week or 2 weeks of things that we learned from doing this stuff. And I imagine that is very applicable to the other, you know, to the COO positions.
Absolutely. That's priceless. Absolutely. Yeah. So that was like, that's the dream, is that,
right. And it's
like you said, that there's like the handbook for every position.
Yeah. It absolutely is like a perfect ideal. And so maybe that's not realistic.
Yeah. I don't, yeah. How could we achieve that? Like it's difficult because I think, like it's like you said, you have to invest like 20% of your energy in just doing this.
Yeah.
The thing
We're already all stretched thin. I mean,
the thing I've been thinking just of is like, can we create some automated calendar that's just like, all right, here's design review 1, here's all the basic responsibilities for the people, like 2 weeks out they need to do this, 3 weeks, you know, so it's just like a mindless,
right.
like, oh, this is going to come up here, you know, because the stuff we've been doing for 3 years, and
you've learned by doing it,
right?
And that's a beautiful example of just like, oh, I know I need to get this thing ready for design review. It's not written anywhere. It's just tacit knowledge that.
Yeah, I think a design review manual would be helpful.
Yeah.
So we have a little bit of a primer of like generally what the general person should be doing as like a design review person or like design review panel thing, but so conclusion. So there's maybe we can think more critically on how we can do like the more fine-grained stuff.
For the role description things. No,
or
that's another good point.
Or even resources. I mean, it's kind of something in the past we've tried to do it like at exit interviews when we transition the roles, but like people are so checked out by then and understandably so.
Yeah, it's tough because they're putting in a lot of time where they don't personally see the reward of it because they're helping the next person to take on the position.
Yeah.
It does sound
part of the job.
You're right. It does sound talking to Ramin like this is something that he really wants to focus on. Leadership identification for new leaders and transition smoothly.
And related to that, something we've talked about is like the onboarding, like formalizing the onboarding process too. I mean, it goes hand in hand, but I think Ramin's
It's also getting like early buy-in, like such that when people kind of get on the exec board, they like have like a little bit more skin in the game, I suppose.
I absolutely no. I again that fits into this so strongly. Where like if we have a very strong impression from the gate, and we're like, oh yeah, like do you want to be a part of this? We interviewed you, like yeah, all right, you're on. Boom, like we've got all of this set up. Like that already puts an impression on them. That already is, at least in my mind, like an implicit, like oh this is for real. Like this is skin in the game. Like. You know, or I need to have my skin in the game because, like, you know, this is not a joke, like, you know, and I think that inherently with volunteer-based positions, like, you're going to have a variety of different people on that front. But I totally agree. I think that's what you're saying, right? Like,
yeah.
Okay, all right.
And I think we'll think about hit into the future, and it's something that will continue to come up. Hopefully, thinking about taking on new people to fill exec board roles. Ramin will figure out the magic way to do that.
I don't want to dovetail the conversation too much, but have you guys started to think of any people that are currently on teams that might be good fits? If you think about everyone in this room, right? We all came on in the spring semester after being involved for a little bit, and then like built the enthusiasm right up to demo day, and then kept that throughout the next academic year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I the more the time goes on, the more that I feel like Matt is probably gonna, like, I would recommend Matt to step in if he's interested in doing this next year to my role. The question is like whether he's going to be bought in. I think that he hasn't said anything to this effect, but I think that he would want more experience building like a venture fund or being more on kind of the strategy side of finance and less on the accounting side. And so I think at some point pretty soon here, you know, I would definitely want to have a conversation with, you know, chapter leadership to see like, you know, what things do you think that we could actually do in the next year for him to do, and if we could say like, oh yeah, we're gonna try to get a venture fund together, or we're gonna try to get, you know, this thing next year together, kind of, you know, in the same vein as a corporate pathways, like here's a program that we're actually gonna try to put wheels on and get off the ground. Then like then I'll spend, you know, I'll put all my blood, sweat, and tears on like getting all the boring accounting stuff set up. So like that's all completely done, and like all, you know, the same with chapter is exactly what they're doing. It's something that can be copy pasted to other chapters, et cetera, so that he's kind of in that frame. Because I think he'd be very good at it. It's going back to kind of Steven's point, like I only would recommend it if he really is strongly like, I am committed to this, because otherwise you might as well just take someone else that feels like they're more committed to it.
Yeah. I mean, traditionally the like fun of the position has been the more development stuff. So like, I mean, I don't know if you consider it fun, but like the creating the policies and stuff, or growing or something. But okay, I marked that down. There are a few like policies that I have failed to start with. So one is that like our sub-renting / like granting graduated team stuff is just like not really figured out, and we're still, I think, ineffectual at supporting our graduated teams. I mean, in terms of like compared to our new teams, right? And so like things for like granting and subleasing, like those are things that I want to work on, you know, to try to finish up before really calling it a retirement. But
that's something I'm happy to sit down and like spend 2 hours and try to get a framework around.
Okay.
If you want to do that on the weekend.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, I mean, probably be into that. So you mentioned like before calling this a retirement, like you mean like you?
Yeah. So the official news is that like I am a lame duck president right now. Well, I mean, January 1st is kind of like where we're supposed to be transitioning. Ramin is gone, and Israel, I think. So he asked me to keep the meetings going, but. In reality, we haven't done a lot to do the transition, so we still have on our end a few things to do. But from once we talk, then it'll be really kind of Ramin's decision on like how he wants the transition to go.
Okay.
So.
Yeah, no, and that's something.
Congratulations.
Yes, done it officially. But you're still here. Sorry.
Good luck stepping out. It's harder than you might think.
The only comment that I would, I guess like the only suggestion, if I have any authority to make a suggestion,
Yeah, always.
would be to like very clearly communicate this in some way to not only people on the exec board and the leadership, but also like the major constituents. I think that might be like a marketing or communications job. I think it's something that I really realized like a few weeks ago. I think it's something that we don't do very well. It's like be very clear about who's in what role. I mean, and the thing that has come up time and time again is like people come to you about finance stuff because they dealt with you for 2 years about finance stuff. They have no idea it exists. And I think that just for efficiency's sake, at the very top of that list, it would be useful to communicate that really clearly.
Yeah.
And I think that that's fairly commonplace in organizations. It's just like, this transition is happening on the organizational level. And of course, we'll probably roast you in the letter. And
Okay. So I'll have to think more of like the vendors and stuff we deal with, but like we've made an announcement to our like general mailing, or actually has that even gone out yet?
Yeah, I was wondering if Rachel's.
There was an announcement with.
Well, the name change we've announced, but
Yeah.
a newsletter was supposed to go out
Oh, I thought
weeks
that
ago.
was the same email.
She had a few teams send her like team descriptions,
Yeah.
and that was all I've heard of it.
Okay. So I'll follow up with her, but there's newsletters announced. Like we have an advisory board meeting coming up, which is like another thing that I need to talk about, but that I'll be talking to our stakeholders. So
Okay.
all the, at least for in terms of like telling Ramin is the president, but that's something where we'll have our stakeholders that I can also mention that you're like our money guy.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
'Cause
No, and
that-
I know I use me as an example, but I think it might be applicable across the board, and that's I'm sure that you
generally
still deal
applicable.
with many St. Louis stakeholders, and now we
Yeah.
are talking about organizational structure mapping. I mean, if we have like a one sheet that's like, all right, here's all the people that exist in St. Louis, I think that would help facilitate that.
Okay, cool. So a couple other small things. Like one thing I want to do is try to like standardize our branding a little more, and I think Rachel has been doing a great job so far with it. And hopefully with this new name, that shouldn't change. But it seems to just hit. Mainly, it's recruitment. That's the issue, and she did a great job on making sure we had the PowerPoints we needed and stuff. So that's good.
People have been calling it Sling Health to me.
Have they?
Being
Okay.
Prompted, so
Cool, great.
somebody called it Shing Health, and I was like, I don't know what that is. Sounds good. Halfway there.
There's the like obvious goal of changing the name, and we did that, and the name has changed, and that's the most important thing.
Yes. Let's keep going. Please.
Keep going.
That was such a pain in the ass.
Yeah, so I mean, it's like reasonable to talk a little bit. Like the standard reaction I've been getting is like, we hate the name, but I think that happens with every single name change.
No,
Like,
yeah, I think
for me as a consumer, I've had the same reaction, and it's just time that I think that's all.
Yeah,
it'll take.
I've gotten mixed messages, and it's very tough to tell whether the people that are favorable are just being favorable to my face, or they actually like it. Like a bunch of people, like Ben Johnson, for instance, seem to think that it's a much better encapsulation of what we do. Right? So that's a positive and what we were going for.
Great.
Yeah, I think the red flags come up when people are like, it's what was the example with Amazon? It was like it was originally called Abracadabra, and then some like big VC came to Jeff Bezos and was like, it sounds too much like cadaver. You have to change the name. And he was like, oh, that's a good point. Like I didn't ever think of that. I haven't had any like examples like that come forward of like, it sounds too much like this dirty word or something like
It
that.
doesn't sound too much like Sling TV. I'm a customer of that.
Sounds a lot like Sling
So
TV,
long.
but we have a trademark, so fuck them.
Yeah, so I think that I agree. It's all been just like visceral, like I just don't like it, And
But it'll pass. I had a plan with Rachel to like hit people 3 times, and it was supposed to be, I'm a little disappointed this didn't happen, but like we had the name change, and a week later there was supposed to be a Christmas card with our name on it.
This is Rachel or Sarah?
I'm sorry, Sarah. And then the week after was supposed to be our newsletter, and I'm disappointed that only the first thing happens. So I'll have to talk to him. But I guess it's not too late. I guess we can do like a post. We can do a New Year thing. I guess.
Very small
Valentine's
aside
Day.
tied into that
Mhm.
with the new year, especially given the involvement of Myers and Ashley and Julie at Hush Blackwell were the top three I was thinking. I was thinking it might be nice to give them each a bottle of wine or something like that. But
I'm getting them jackets.
Oh, that'll be good.
At least Myers and Ashley. I'm getting them our logo jackets, which I'm working on getting embroidered right now.
Are we doing anything for BSW?
okay, glad I asked.
Hadn't planned on it. I didn't.
We pay BSW, so
We-
it's a little bit less.
We have a
Oh,
few
okay,
extra.
okay.
We have a few extra jackets, but
Are those in yet?
the jackets are in our office. I'm sorry, they're not because they're at the embroiderers right now. But
Being embroidered like with the logo?
yeah. Which there's a little bit of an issue. I really like this texture, but it turns out it's like impossible to see any gray on it or white. So it might be something like purple and black are the letters. That, or we have to like change the logo to make it super thick lettering.
Which
But-
is very easy to do.
Okay. I'll think about it. Maybe after the meeting, I can just show you the mock-ups and get y'all's advice. But to stay on the train, the one big thing for Rum and I was try to reorganize to try to address our activities better. This is something that I would really appreciate y'all's feedback on. But like we had created this like your type of position, which is more of the like operating support thing. And we have the finance person, which has a little bit more help on that. I don't know if there's any like blind spots we still haven't covered, or
Yeah, I
or
think-
jobs that you think that we think probably need to be addressed better.
I mean, and maybe it's tied in with Sarah, but I think you can never have enough marketing / website updating.
Publicity stuff.
Yeah, that's
That's
something that has come up from the national side, right? Somebody was like,
And advocate calling us out on not being good enough at publicity.
yeah, and I mean, I think
Mhm.
she went a little. I think she went a little
Maya.
far, but like,
Maya's great though.
yeah, no, I mean, it was she made good points, but I think she went a little far. But the point still being like, yeah, I don't think we can ever have enough people that like are gonna keep posting stuff on Twitter or like, adding things to a newsfeed on our website.
So this is all external publicity.
Yeah,
and
just like
I even
world facing.
kind of both. I mean, I think it'd be nice if there was more communication with our teams, and I can only send out so many emails. I know Ramin sends out emails. It'd be I think it's always good to have the exec board pinging them with, hey, here's this resource that's available to you. Here's this seminar you can attend. I think I can do that more, but I think also and that's not necessarily a position, but I think as a whole, we should be more active in communicating with our teams, both electronically and if you just see them
Something
around.
that I previously dreamed of and then eventually gave up on was trying to form a stronger alumni network where we tried to keep in touch with people and facilitate meeting up and events and whatever. But that's me.
I mean,
You
yeah,
can do a little of that, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, just this one happy hour thing, that was one of the goals, is try to get graduate teams there engaging with us at the bare minimum. I thought it was super successful. Those were the most people that there were just as many graduated people as came out, so that was more successful than I thought. It does make me it seems like it would be cool to try to have now have participants come to these happy hours.
yeah,
Just-
and I think we should potentially do that. As far as utilizing graduate teams, they've been in love with coming to design reviews.
Nice.
All the eFarmix people, the Datadog people. I'm sure if we asked other people too,
Okay.
they would come, but those are the people who kind of asked the most.
That's great. So I just want to emphasize. So you did think they were very, very positive about it.
Yeah,
Okay.
well, Blake's always positive, but Blake was
Yeah.
really into it. Elizabeth, Russell was really into it. Robbie can never make it, but he always talks about wanting to be there. Avik likes being there, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. When you think back on the last 4 years, because we've now existed for 4 years, we've had something like 350 people go through the seamless chapter.
Mm-hmm.
And most of them no longer participate with us, but it'd be nice to facilitate the ones that want to and have better records so as they move on with their lives and make more money and have more potential positive value to add with mentoring teams and stuff. It's hard to put.
So maybe just a mental note. Like, I feel like we only reach out to them when we're like we reach out to graduated teams for the panel when we're like scrambling, but maybe they should be on our first pass.
Or just make the first pass right here. And then
Make it
second
early,
pass,
yeah,
maybe
yeah,
still early
all
enough
the
to
above.
convince
Yeah,
them.
yeah. Sorry, did I interrupt something?
Have you did you get the email finally about the policies for the team leads? Are you on that thread of all the project leads? Like, are you on that group that Ramin sent me?
I want to say I might not be. That
Okay.
is kind of new to me.
Because I'm
Let
still
me see the
trying to
email.
vet if.
Mariana, side note, I don't think we ever figured out trying to redo the CRM for design review. I'd created a pipeline, and it's just a design review pipeline.
Yeah, I think it's okay.
Okay.
If you want to look at it and think if that fulfills everything, but we can sit down and slam through our mentors to redo that.
Yeah.
And then I got that one.
This is
Yeah.
cool.
Okay.
Yeah, even this stuff's great. Like just providing our team's content, I think is good.
Yeah. No, and I think like sending. Oh, yeah. I forgot. We've got a lot of things to talk about on this front.
Not now.
Let's never speak of this again. Okay.
Yeah. So going on, one thing that I kind of pivoted towards is I realized we're really bad at so there's this like clear transition right now where the original people like Steve aren't involved anymore. So a lot of our strength in our medical connections kind of fell off, I thought, this year. So we have this no CRM pipeline that has all our mentors that are in it, and it's organized by specialty and year. And so hopefully that'll be a lot more useful for us to submit to teams. I think you're familiar with this, right?
I'm familiar with the pipeline we made of like the mentors for design reviews and doctors for specific.
Yeah, doctors, and Mario and I are trying to clean it up for design review mentors now too. But.
Along those lines, and I'm just kind of spitballing here, I think we should think about having events where we invite a lot of those people too, like happy hour events, because I think that a big piece of that is the personal connections with those people that you guys have cultivated.
Yeah,
over
we
so
did
many
that one
years.
year. I don't remember which year where it was like the January, February design review was more public in CIC, and we had a lot of those people there.
Yeah.
That worked really well.
Yeah, and I mean, I've been. That's a major reason I've been trying to go to design review. I mean, I guess it's only under one.
We worked with
But I think that's a great
happened, and they like
opportunity
co-funded it.
to try to like
Province.
cultivate those relationships and be like, oh, okay, now that Steve is not with the St. Louis chapter all the time, at least he like, all right, so somebody meets me, and then they know who I am. I just think that is, it's tough because we're inherently turning over so many people.
One kind of exciting clinical update is that the AMA has been enthusiastic about growing from a collaboration to a partnership, and with that, spending their own effort to solicit sponsorships on our behalf and solicit problems on our behalf. So hopefully that will start paying dividends soon.
Cool.
Our meaning the network,
Our meaning the company and
the
all
entire
the chapters.
organization.
Cool. Another thing that I'd set up to do is making it easier to track metrics, especially our commercial metrics. So that to that extent, I've created, and I kind of tested it mainly this December and updating stuff, but it's not perfect. I want it to be completely automated, but the problem. So right now I've set up it's a based on a questionnaire, and I have a Google script that automatically sends out emails to ask people to fill it in. And it could be something where it's just like every quarter it just happens, or every half year or something. But the biggest challenge of like always is like getting people to respond. And so like, it took 2 hours to make the script, but it took me like 4 hours just to like remind people 3 times over and over to fill out the survey. So I'm still looking into better automated ways where if that auto reminder was there, maybe that'd make it easier.
There are definitely CRMs that do that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Our stuff at UVCA even does that. It's like campus groups. Just some school group CRM really kind of thing.
Yeah.
But you can have it like if you don't hear a response, email again in a week or something.
Okay. And I'm just going to skip this or move on unless anyone else has comments. It's just kind of me talking. But and then the final thing, which I think we really haven't figured out yet, and honestly we haven't spent a lot of time on, is how we really like. So the main thing for me is like, how do we create unicorns, and then how do we support them, right? And that's like the hardest thing, because we have a little bit of a better of a trend, but basically our success comes from outliers, and so like, how do you promote outliers? I think this year we've had a little bit like more of a focus on just going back to that like education mission of like getting people exposed, which I think is really great. We've done things like we've figured out different metrics on trying to measure that so that we can measure that success a little bit more. But how do we? And there have been some small tweaks like on funding to just try to be like outward about saying like, we have money if you need it, just ask us for it. But I don't know if there are any other specific things that we can work on to try to promote our big blockbuster success stories.
Well, it comes down to the ones that have been big are the OTM, former OTM ones, and also where the mentors or key guys and they're really involved in like applied particle technology.
So that's the one example of that, right?
Yeah. And wasn't
Well, Barnell.
Barnell's OTM?
Yeah.
A little bit less.
No, it was a
right?
shit show.
Yeah.
In addition to working on shit. Sorry.
Yeah, I mean, and it's a little bit sad you bring that up, because like OTM basically like barred anyone from like Idea Labs working from any on their projects.
Right. So that's like, yeah.
So it's like something we like kind of have to amend a little bit maybe. But I mean, the other thing I think that, and I think we've seen a little bit of a trend, but I think the problem is that I'm a little worried that we've exhausted all the unicorns that exist in WashU. Because if you think about it,
WashU gets new students.
yeah, right, and like the cycle's every like 4 years, right? In terms like, because our freshman BS isn't going to do anything, and well, I guess
Except
you have
one that
grad
Will
students.
Tabber that moved to Stanford is no longer at WashU
Yeah, right.
When do
So
you move to Stanford?
this year.
yeah, so I hope that's like, because I saw like this year we worked probably just as hard to get people to apply and stuff. We had a lot less applications and a little fewer teams participating. EWH had a lot more people participating, which is interesting, and those kind of evened out our numbers. But I'm really interested to see next year, and like.
Yeah, I mean, even though I think like our like median might be higher this year than last year. Well, I guess last year we really didn't have any unicorns, but I still don't really think we have any unicorns this year.
Yeah.
There's no one really that's like occupying my time or like using our resources like I feel our past unicorns probably were.
So one thing that I've noticed is that the teams are highly suggestible. Like if you think that one has a lot of potential, and when you have coffee with them, you like tell them flat out that you think that they have a lot of potential and should be striving to be like the winning team at demo day and like move forward as a company, that actually does motivate them to work a lot harder. Because deserved or not, they do seem to look up to us in our opinions. So
And I think that's a good point. I think we can maybe do a little bit more of that in like making them realize that they can get a lot of money to push this project forward, and they're at the same level that other teams that have gone through a program that have got a lot of money are at.
the one that I'm most excited about from last year is probably Robert Chen and Elnot.
Oh yeah, I think I'm still excited about
But otherwise, it's
Bouncing off
that's
of
true.
bouncing off of that, like I think that's something. Looking back on demo day this year, I you know, or not demo day, sorry, orientation this year. Something that we could do a little bit more is like for the greater good. And if you know, you said like deserved or not, you know, whether they live it, they still look up to us. They kind of cultivate that aura, I guess, or that like stigma of the board and the people. You know, it's like I don't have any kind of like tangible ways to do that, but I think that you know
I think
there's nothing wrong with kind of creating that sort of creating and preserving that image, like so that people kind of value.
Luckily, I don't think we need to create it, at least within like this year's cohort. I think that image is strong.
The image does draw people into wanting to be on the board too.
And then they get a few weeks in and realize what we're all about.
Well, I mean, yeah, I don't.
Yeah, it's tough.
So is the unicorn mostly the people, or is it Robin also?
I think it's mostly
No, yeah.
It's like the age-old entrepreneur
Yeah.
question, and the answer generally is the people.
I mean, it's always chicken and egg. It's like, who's the best, like, which CEO is fundable? The CEO that has gotten funds before.
Right.
That's literally the answer VCs tell you, right? So, but, like, of course, at some point, someone has to take the, you know, but,
Yeah.
but
Or just be like brought in this paternalistic society of like
Well,
being with a different CEO that's
Yeah.
got funds.
yeah, I mean, there's a lot of, at least a lot of the investors that I've talked to in formal and informal settings say like, oh, I'll invest a team that seems really strong with a terrible idea over a really like the best idea with a team that seems really dysfunctional. Like, and any day
Sure.
I would take the strong team. And you know, and yeah, it's that's like an inception question, but of course, like you know, the easier thing is like, well, they've gotten funding in those other places, and it starts kind of roll.
right. I mean, because I think, like, if it's something like how much can we cultivate versus how much is it just finding people, like, if it's just about the people, then you spend every month doing a recruitment event, right? And you just get them in whenever.
I also wonder
Right.
too, like, are we getting, like, there's only so much talent WashU has, and it's not so much that we need to, like, get our name out there more, but we need to get our name out to the right people and make them think
Yeah.
that this is the place to be. For instance, Daniel Tomasi, who you've had some success working with, I view as kind of like the people we want in the program because he's totally bought in. And he got in the program because Cliff Volkamp told him that Idea Labs at the time is the best place for you to like form a startup within the WashU ecosystem.
Cool.
And I think, honestly, I don't think it's so much that we need to like spend more recruitment time, but we need people that are like the guys at WashU that are kind of seeing the talent to kind of send people our way. And I think right now we kind of have a good relationship. Additionally, who's the guy that runs the MNG?
Dennis Barber was.
Yeah, Dennis Barber. He pushed people to us as well that I view as the most talented, or one of the most talented project leaders. He
It's
pushed
worth
our-
circling back and seeing how many people are in the MNG. And the initial goal was for that to like be a one-to-one. If they're in the MNG, they're a project leader in our program. But that's not happening, which is fine. But we should think about what's the best collaboration level.
But I guess what I'm getting at with that is certainly I think for like recruiting talent, I don't know how we maximize the amount of Dennis Barbers and Emily Tokers and Cliff Holcamps, but making sure that we cast a wide net and get the people that are most motivated within WashU to work through our program.
Well, it's certainly like affirming to hear Cliff recommend us. I mean, he's the one to go to for commercialization.
Well, Cliff told me about Idea Labs April of 2015, and we didn't start until September of 2015. You know, like I came for an admin weekend. One of the first things I heard when I was on WashU campus was like, "Oh, you want to be doing healthcare or life sciences stuff? You should be on Idea Labs."
We even pitched that weekend too, right?
Yeah,
I think I pitched that. Yeah.
No, I think I heard it from. Yeah, I probably heard it from both sources.
Yeah.
That's right. And you know, I think to address that, maybe we just ask, Emma and Cliff, like, what is it? Like, why? Like, how can we connect with people in that way? Like, what drew you to us? What do you find so, like, I don't know.
Maybe
we have our own answers to these questions, but what do you find so valuable about what we're doing and how?
Maybe like a thing to think about for us is that it's the team, right? It's the right people. It's getting Blake Margraphs in our program that are going to just drive a team forward. One of the things about those people is they're not necessarily health tech focused. So one thing to think about is how we pull those people. We don't necessarily need people that are going to be getting their MDs or like.
A community that I recently learned of is this Langendorf Scholar thing, which is undergrads. Alan Osgood is one of them. Blake, I think, is one of them as well. Which, I mean, N of 2, pretty self-selective, right? I think it's only like 5 undergrads a year or something. So maybe we should talk to Bobak. I think it's like figure out who those people are and hit them hard as soon as they're on campus.
What is that scholarship for? Is it targeted
like
towards
people that they really want
entrepreneurship?
here for undergrad?
Oh, okay.
I don't know what specifically it's for.
I would say the biggest draw for your average business student is going to be the IP thing. To be like, you have a shot at getting a company off the ground. Like getting a head start at getting a company off the ground. And if that's something that you are seriously interested in, then you're not going to find a better place with the amount of support. Like the balance of like support and owning your own IP than us. I remember pitching that to a few people.
Okay. So I think it's certainly like worth another discussion to try to think about all our policies and how we can.
Just because it's getting kind of late.
I definitely want to hear about, like, I've been promoting these things that I thought were important, but hopefully, like, I want you guys to tell me about things that you guys think are important that you think we should work on for this semester.
Just contact with teams. I think coming off of break, I'd like to ramp that up and see more contact this semester and last semester. I guess only
like email contact or
we got about
all
office
hours.
hours too.
I don't know if I'm sold on office hours, but I mean, if you see someone in the hall that you recognize that's involved, even if you don't know, just like talk to them and get them excited. And like Steve was saying, like say things like, when do you think you're going to be pitching to investors, or something along those lines that makes them feel that they're kind of on the route to getting to that stage. And then I was just going to update everybody. So you saw the video pitch deliverable. I emailed out.
Yes. When does that due again? The end of the month?
The 27th.
Okay.
So hopefully this like a 3-minute pitch that we're going to have all the teams do. So far, the Michigan group also is doing it, and they're going to have the same deadline. And hopefully we can get Penn to do it, though they're pushing to move the deadline back. But then after we get all of the pitches together, we're going to kind of have everyone watch each other's pitches and offer feedback, and hopefully distribute it to the mentors as well. So that's moving.
How long are the pitches? 3 minutes?
3 minutes.
Can we have like a pitch party? Like, you invite people to watch the pitches here?
Oh yeah, that's a good idea. Yeah, we can do that. That's a great idea.
Double whammy, trying to get people to interact and you can slam through 'em.
Yeah, I like that. I don't know.
Just autoplay on the YouTube. And like, of course they can watch on their own, but gives more chance to face to face.
And then we can, yeah.
Builds a community. Mario,
any strategy things that you think it's reasonable to pull the team towards?
For the teams, you're saying?
Sorry, the like leadership team. Us.
Not that I could think of right now. I mean, I guess last year we had, I guess, different people doing other stuff. But I think like doing, or somebody in like my position doing mentorship, if there's two, it would be nicer. Because like it's hard to maintain a lot of these things.
Yeah.
In the sense of like keeping mentors in the loop and all that. Yeah.
It's nice having something to delegate. Sorry.
To have help.
Yeah.
Caveat. It's nice having someone competent to delegate to.
True.
Yeah.
Which is why that's happening today.
I don't know what we were gonna do in the sense of like, I remember I got emails from the CIC people. Did we ever prune away a lot of the
Yeah.
of the youth mentors? But like, I guess somebody that Charlotte, I don't know what she's been up to. Charlotte. Like, did she do it or did you do it?
I didn't. But I mean, I think you can. I think Charlotte, if you like ask Charlotte for help, she'll help. I don't think she'll.
Yeah, I guess.
Yeah, Charlotte, you kind of just have to ask to do stuff.
Yeah. But it's all. What I'll do is I'll write up like a lot of the things that like I like are like really important and when to do them or whatnot.
Yeah.
For whatever I've been doing. But in the sense of like, I don't know. I think we took too many teams on this round. But I don't know. What do you?
Yeah, I think we could have cropped out a few.
How many are like? I'm just curious. How many people have had a member drop out?
I'm sure a lot of people had a member drop out.
I wouldn't view that as a negative though.
Just curious. I mean, less. We like it's trying to get less teams, more people. But
Yeah, it's so hard to vet. I mean,
yeah, they're giving a lot of applicants. But I don't know. That's something that.
I don't think it's a negative for people to drop off a team, especially
Not
if we can
necessarily.
follow up with them
Yeah.
and try to keep
Right.
them enthusiastic. Because the
What we
point
should
isn't
do
to
is
like
like
force
those
them
that
into
have
a
people
particular team.
dropped out, maybe try to find out why. If they can give us some metric of
yeah.
Medical
I mean, for like to be honest, for me as a leader, like
Yeah.
having people drop out is actually really nice because I'm like
that. You do more.
I take less because I don't have to keep reminding them and keep
Ah.
thinking about them, and because like if they're drop out because of inactivity, I guess that's what I'm suggesting.
I see.
Like I have one person I'm having a huge problem with on one of our teams because he just comes to meetings
It doesn't do
and
it.
doesn't do anything.
Yeah, I think that's worst. Yeah, that's the worst.
So,
Yeah, I hate that.
like, and one thing, like, we should have as many people engage, and if they're excited and think whatever, but I don't know, I always switch back and forth.
No, I think people dropping out isn't necessarily bad. I am curious, like, I know Erica Barnell started out with a large amount of people, and she cropped, and that was, like, a negative thing, like, there's some bad blood, but I don't know if other people have had that experience. I think I've had experiences with Ian, like Ian had, where I had people on my team when I was in Idea Labs that, like, didn't work at all, but then would show up to meetings and really were just a hindrance. So I kind of wish they would have dropped. So I don't necessarily think people drop minutes.
Yeah, especially when
Yeah.
we're expecting them to do something.
Yeah.
I think what
It's like
typically
with
more
4 or
happens
5
is
pieces.
you have, like, a team leader leave, and then people are like, oh, this is an excuse for me to quit. Like, this happened with the mountain crop problem I was working on.
Mhm.
or once I couldn't work on it anymore, it was a week before the other co-leader was like, I'm out of here, and then everyone, of course, bailed out. So, and I tell them like, hey, if you guys want to join other teams. Anyhow,
simplified version of what happened when I was
yeah.
at Idea Labs.
Trying to prevent that from happening with the Atlanta chapter leadership. The president needing to drop out.
When are we having our meeting next week?
So that's a good question. I think Ramin was. So Ramin and I need to communicate more, but I think he had that survey, which I haven't seen the results, but I think he said Thursday looks like it's a better time. Does that? I don't know if you guys can see the results, but I think he was. So I think he'll be here next week. Do you know when he's getting back? I think he'll be here next week, and so he'll be leading that.
I think he gets back
he'll
like
be back
the
on
15th or
Monday
17th.
or Sunday.
I mean, 17th is the first day of classes, right? So
Yeah.
something around there.
But yeah, he's coming back at kind of 11th hour.
So the short answer is stay tuned, I guess. I don't
It
know.
looks like Thursday.
I think Thursday night.
From a finance standpoint, we're still drafting all of these policies, trying to formalize them. We've got the travel reimbursement policy, the working meeting reimbursement policy. We're still getting our chart of accounts walked through so that people, we're actually moving away from that. I think what's going to happen is like exec members are just going to submit into one account, and then our team will divvy it up.
Okay.
So that not everyone has to learn all of the books set up. We are trying, we're now trying to also figure out if we can still get sales tax reimbursed. It looks like we can get reimbursement up to 3 years. But we've only been a nonprofit for 2 years, right?
Been a nonprofit since.
Well, we've been associated with a nonprofit
We've
for
been
our entire
the 501c3 status was retroactive to our incorporation date, which was April 15th, 2014.
Okay, so effectively we've got all of that up in the air. What we're trying to figure out is just like, is it worth the time and effort to do it? Because it's going to be a pain in the ass to do it, and
It's probably
not
going to be
what
like
it's going to be.
$30.
It
maybe
looks like
more
it could
than
be a
that, but-
few thousand, but it's like
What? Really?
Yeah.
For sales tax?
Does that sound really?
That sounds really high.
What, 1,000 times?
Sounds like
What's
it would be
10% sales tax? 10,
3D
$10,000?
printers and stuff, I guess.
$1,000.
But I didn't
Yeah.
pay sales tax.
Yeah, there's a
Yeah,
lot of
so-
stuff that didn't pay sales tax, but there's a couple of big ticket items that seem to show up early on. I'm
It's
recalling
also
this
very
often.
tricky what technically qualifies for getting sales tax exemption.
True, and the other big thing is because Missouri is set up the way it is, and because St. Louis Metro is set up the way it is, it's going to be a pain in the ass trying to divvy out which state tax. Like, we get state tax back, we get county tax back, we get city tax back, we get Hamley Road tax back, like whatever. So
Yeah, right.
it's
It's like
we're gonna try to compile something that's like, are we doing this
Okay.
or not? Other things that we've been trying to do, sublease strategy is on my thing as well.
Okay, we can
that
get
we
together
haven't
for that. I have a couple ideas, sketching some stuff.
Yeah, me too. And then investment opportunities and venture funds. And I've just been like, we're not going to even talk about that until the spring.
Yeah.
And
How's this been?
it'll be now's the spring.
in the spring.
So
Okay.
yeah, and I won't, just because we're on time, I don't want to go through the stuff that we have done, but
I think
we've done some things.
A couple of quick things.
Yeah.
One of the main reasons I wanted to come today is because obviously this group and you guys have been a huge part of my life and really important to me over the last few years. So I wanted to invite you all to my PhD thesis defense next Friday at 2 p.m. at Holden Auditorium, in case you happen to be free. I also am curious, because we're always trying to do as good of a job as we can, how you think the chapter network relationship has been going, what could go smoother, so that we can try to improve that. But we don't have to necessarily dive too deep into that if you don't want.
You want to talk about it, or
I
is
feel
that?
like, I feel like that's a meeting. Like we should spend
Pretty
some time getting into that. And I mean, it's not my call, but that's my.
Yeah, hopefully with the AMA stuff, we start seeing ROI in terms of like problems and other kinds of support. But yeah, I think it's a longer conversation, I guess.
I think it's very easy for me to, because I probably have the least history, definitely have the least history of everybody in this room, with the organization as a whole, and on the board, on the exec team. So it's very easy for me to think, like, oh, all right, the chapter and the network, and I think that like there needs to be more formalization around it, and understand like how we can support one another. Anyways, sorry, you looked to Mario and I talked.
No, that's, yeah.
Typical 10.
I mean,
I know that you'd mentioned it in the advisory board meeting agenda, and so I was kind of curious what you were
Yeah, I
thinking.
mean, I definitely welcome a conversation about it. Like, I've seen things that I don't think our stakeholders would be very excited about, and so that's my main worry. And I think we're not leveraging a tremendous amount of experience by not engaging them to help us do this. And you have like Dedrick, who started iCores, you have deans, retired deans who have run entire organizations, have restructured, you have Emre and Dedrick, who just did this new restructuring of the provost, like Emre, who's starting this SBIR company thing. Like, these are people who have done this before, so I would love to leverage them a little bit better. And I think, in short, I share as well that I think that the chapter network thing is still very dicey.
So yeah,
What
so
things are you primarily concerned about with that?
I think the things that have just primarily bugged me is just the kind of coziness in terms of financial stuff and using resources that just doesn't seem like it's on board with what our stakeholders had funded us to do. That's like the main stuff.
Do you have examples of what you're thinking of in that?
Like,
Because when I actually try to think back through,
yeah.
like, I know that there was definitely a lot of foreshadowing of being uncertain how funds would transfer. But when I think back through network level expenses, the chapter covered trademark costs. And the chapter, meaning the grant that came from WashU School of Engineering, covered flying some people into the event, which was something that people in St. Louis solicited, and the WashU engineering program seemed to think was worthwhile.
Mm-hmm.
Other than those two examples, nothing. I don't think that we have spent any money from the chapter accounts towards the network.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that I'm missing one or two things, but
And I think that's primarily because I've had to like fight tooth and nail sometimes, and it's like let's be honest, right? Like, there's like serious friction between us because I felt like I've continually have to defend that, and like things like the demo day prize money retroactively being doled out by the chapter so network could have some cash. This like proposal of taxing the corporate pathway at 30% when there's a 40% margin on this, like it just. There are big things like that where it's just like, I know like it's tough getting started with the network and getting that cash flow going, but it's just like,
yeah,
this continuously leaning on the chapter for the resources to make it happen is not appropriate.
Yeah,
Well,
there's some big underlying questions here, obviously,
Right.
that are tricky to sort out, and I've tried to do as strong a job as I can. I'm trying to think through it from multiple perspectives, network and chapter. I think one thing that I try to reiterate, but seems to sometimes just bounce off the wall and not stick, is that I think that you frequently underestimate the amount of liability that the company assumes and the amount of time the company assumes to do things. Like for this EIR stuff, I know that you've clearly put in a ton of time to get it set up, I've also probably put in about 100 hours of time to get all the legal stuff figured out and to help solicit funding and some other things. And there's a lot of
For that
liability there.
project.
Yeah, for the corporate pathway. And the SEIC stuff going into it. The liability there is pretty clear too. Whenever you employ somebody, you definitely hope that it is as valuable as possible and builds all relationships on all fronts, but there are potential damages that could happen, right? If like a relationship with big potential mentors or sponsors or something goes downhill as a result of that pathway, that's a huge liability for the company. And so I think that we need to not only try to be clear about limiting funds, but also appreciating as many of the externalities as we can, because I think that sometimes that gets underappreciated. And that can be a big source of friction because we're coming at it from different perspectives of understanding. Obviously, everybody always thinks that they put in more effort and work than anybody else, just inherently. People overvalue their time. But trying to like see it from all the perspectives is definitely important.
Well,
Absolutely, and that's
yeah.
like I get that too, but like there's an employment contract to limit risk. There's a customer contract that limits risk, and like that's why you spend time on those. And like I just don't think that's I don't think that's an issue. I think on that particular point, like we don't need to go. That's why I didn't want to have like this tack on thing, because I'm afraid we're going to keep diving into these examples. But like,
well, yeah, and that's, I mean, I think from what I understand, and I think I understand my place in this debate, in this conversation, but I will also like accept if people think that I don't know my place. But from what I understand and from the sides that I've heard, the big elephant in the room is like, this should have been figured out before we started going down that road, and that ship has sailed, right? Like all of the understanding of the dynamics between the chapter and the network and the subsequent chapters that exist, like that's gone, and so now
it's impossible to predict before we know.
It is. No, of course. I mean, and regardless of whether or not it was, we could have figured some things out or not, you know, it's in the past. And so I guess what seems very apparent to me is that there are a lot of opinions that honestly everything that I feel like everything that you two have said in the last 10 minutes has been really valid. But it needs to come down to like, we need to put things on paper. We need to come to agreements based on actual numbers, based on actual things that, you know, have happened and that we project and that we can, you know, and that's, I don't know, it's probably going to take a few days and some very long meetings. But I feel like if we don't just bite the bullet and have some like tough meetings to like rectify this and get on the same page, then this dynamic is just going to exist in perpetuity, and that's dangerous.
And I would also add that like I think there's a lot of like things retrospectively that could have been done different. And I think that's where a lot of tension lies. I think nailing down how we want things to look prospectively is kind of what those meetings would serve to do.
Yeah.
And I think like setting up time to have like hour-long conversations about this would be good, and then especially going into the I think bringing on the St. Louis board or advisory boards kind of insight onto this would be helpful.
We
I think
I have had many conversations with many of the people on the St.
Or I
Louis
guess what I'm
advisory
getting
board
at is I think like having our own long conversations together, I don't know, next week or sometime, kind of thinking through how things exist now and how we want things to look moving forward. That way we can kind of go into the advisory board meeting with a little more pointed like
Purpose,
I think would be helpful. I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, my goal, so like I was going to go to a meeting and like without having to go into details, I was just going to say like I feel like what we have established isn't working, and so we need to think critically about how do we set up the infrastructure, just like Ted said, in order to find this. And so I was hoping that, so I've been talking to Ralph that we're going to try to do something like get someone like Emre to like lead a committee and to own it and to like have this work out. And I think like this chapter contract thing like is a really awesome start, but there was, I think, a lot of stuff that was still missing from it, and to kind of treat it formally and informally at the same time, I think is dangerous to do. And I just think that there are people that are much smarter than us that can help us figure this out.
That have done it many more times.
Yeah.
I agree.
Understand conflict of
The only
interest.
thing I would say, like in regards to having Emory or someone else or someone like Emory do it, obviously they have a lot of their own conflicts of interest that would play into how it.
Yeah, I think a big step, like a big first step, is understanding who is mediating, who is actually in charge of like representing stakeholders that exist within the entire organization, and then like ultimately how those decisions are going to get made. Not what decisions, or not like what the answers to those decisions are, but like a step further back where it's like, how are we even going to approach making those decisions? Like, who is ultimately going to be kind of going back to the stakeholders thing, like who are all the stakeholders and how much weight do they have to like, make these decisions?
Well,
and those are, again,
I think that we are
long,
thankfully in a very
conversations.
good position for improving this over the coming 6 to 12 months.
Yeah.
We now have a 10-person national board that is extremely capable, and I think will do a very good job. We are starting to build a national level advisory board to help us think through some of this structuring, including some people locally and some people not locally. So those two things alone are huge, right? Because previous to this, the national network was basically me and George Denny putting in a crap ton of time to try to think through how to make this work.
Right.
And so, yes, it wasn't possible for me individually to have enough time to do all of the things that ideally the national network should be able to do to support the chapter. So I think that the infrastructure is getting there, and we need to obviously try to continue honing it to make it as valuable to everybody as possible. Some of the very tangible benefits that I already see, if we think of Demo Day 2 years ago, all of the work came from people in St. Louis that were St. Louis chapter based. If we think about Demo Day last year, where Amanda and George and I put in a ton of work in addition to the St. Louis chapter-based people, and I grant that it's debatable which time should count as chapter and network time. And Demo Day this year, where we have a committee led by Amanda that has 8 people that aren't even in St. Louis that are putting in a lot of time to figure out sponsors and investors and everything else. That's already a massive win just by saving that amount of time for the chapter.
Yeah.
In addition, I think the investor conference was very effective in Blake and Erica and Elizabeth and several other alumni teams' eyes, and will continue to be effective. And so I think that we're well positioned. We obviously want to continue trying to foresee and circumvent issues as much as possible.
Yeah, no, and I think that's one, you've brought up, actually, I guess I should say one, but like a few pieces of the puzzle is, the Demo Day question, the national board role question, and something that I think I've heard concerns on is the interplay between that and well, really the interplay between the role of the national network and the way that the national network can support the chapter, as well as how kind of that came to be. The fact that the national network was born from this St. Louis chapter, I think, is like the fundamental piece that is, that needs to get figured out formally of like, how did that separation happen, and how does it exist now, and how is that dynamic? That it's a two-way street, right? Like how does that dynamic exist? Because the St. Louis chapter is now is one becoming one of many different parallel entities around the national network, but it's not the same as any of those parallel entities. It's original, right? And so, I kind of resubmit, like, there's just a lot of pieces of the puzzle, and we have to go one by one and really address, like.
Well, hopefully you guys appreciate that. I mean, I definitely think that I could have done things differently in several ways with trying to form the network. But at the same time, I've been trying extremely hard to make it as effective as possible and to not damage anything in the St. Louis chapter and to actually provide support on all fronts. That's the entire reason to build it in the first place. So hopefully, even though it was my first time doing something like this and there are things that could have been done better, hopefully we can all come at it from a position of understanding that we're all trying to do the best that we can.
Yeah, no, and I think that's a good example of something that, like, why we probably need someone who's mediating this, somebody that's like going to kind of keep the essence in the room, that like we are all coming in good faith out of a place of growth. Like we're, there may have been things in the past that may have happened and, been interpreted in different ways, but and are valid in terms of those conversations. But like, if we don't have somebody, if we just have the stakeholders that I feel like that are just kind of like throwing out their different positions, I feel like it could get really messy really fast. But if we have somebody that's like, we're in this to kind of just like check the room every once in a while and be like, we're all in this to build this organization, continue building this organization and keep an eye on the vision. I think that that's going to go a long way. Who that mediator is, or a group of mediators is kind of up for debate. But
I would posit that everybody in the room, except for Ian, sees immediate value in the network, and I hope to convince you.
I don't think that's true. Like, I know I'm like always causing friction. Like, I see the inherent value in it, and I see that it has incredible value. But I just think the way that it's happening is horrendous, and like. And I think I have, I'm sorry, like, you guys have had great success and you guys have done awesome stuff. But in terms of this relationship, like, it's been the biggest cause of stress in my life. And
it's been the biggest one in mine as well.
Maybe I have like an above standard of ethics, but it really pains me, some of the things and some of the requests we get. And it's just like, it needs to be figured out. And, like, we got warned about this a year and a half ago and we're like, okay, we're going to figure it out by trying to do this, and some things, didn't happen. It's just, I think it's time that we go back and we do this correctly, and to do it, like.
And I think that,
like, honestly, if we had just waited 1 year, and like if we had nailed out these policies of like every position, like the year before, and like had all this awesome material to start the network from, like. We'd be in this much different position. But I think it's just like we grew way too fast. It just like exploded.
Right. No,
and these are the consequences of what happened.
And I again, like, looking back, again, coming from a place of admittedly limited historical knowledge, it doesn't seem like it's anybody's fault. Like, it doesn't seem like people were like, oh, well, fuck it, like, we'll just keep going. It does seem like organically the organization grew really fast. In fact, maybe even faster than people anticipated. And you immediately had kind of like two entities that were aligned at some point and then just kind of drifted apart. And so instead of being like, okay, we're going to kind of go parallel, we were here and now we're here. And if we don't address this soon, it's just going to keep drifting apart. And
you nailed it, right? This is by far the most, aside from my dissertation over the last 3 weeks, for instance, this is by far the most stressful thing that's been going on in my life. Like, I hate that our personal relationship has suffered over us having different views over what's the best way to implement becoming a network and growing this organization. I definitely incredibly respect the amount and quality of work that you put into making the St. Louis chapter strong. I think that it's been fantastic. I think this year is obviously dramatically better than last year when I started the cohort. And I give you a ton of credit for that. I think partially because of the friction that's developed, many of the conversations with realigning St. Louis and the network have been happening actually very effectively over the past 3 months, but you haven't been a part of them, right? The National Network Board meetings have been me, Ramin, and Stephen figuring out many of these things. Ramin and Stephen frequently coming at it completely from the idea of how do we make it amenable and as positive as possible for the St. Louis chapter. So I think it would be incorrect to think that there is no convergence. I think it would be incorrect to think that there is no input from the St. Louis chapter. And I hope that we can continue improving it.
Yeah, absolutely. But I think it's time to bring other people in.
Yeah,
and
a lot of those have
and it's
been
going to be a little
brought in
weird.
and continue.
And sorry.
A lot of those people, like I've had a lot of conversations with Emory about this.
Okay.
A few with Dedrick, that Dedrick has been very hard to book time with.
Mm-hmm.
I agree that we should continue leaning on them.
Okay. So maybe like if you could think of like, again, so I think part of the challenge is like segregating, because like you have the St. Louis chapter advisory board, which they're like going to promote St. Louis, right? And so everything they promote is not going to be the best, but like to really understand who those people are, but like, people writing checks to the St. Louis chapter are probably not the best people to have as advisors to the national network.
Unless you want to be St. Louis biased.
Yeah.
I think that that's a very good point. I think that the network is headquartered in St. Louis, should remain headquartered in St. Louis, and should remain St. Louis biased. If we were looking at it purely from a perspective of where's the most opportunity, Demo Day wouldn't be in St. Louis, right? Like it would make way more sense to have it in Boston or San Francisco or something as we continue growing. But I think that that's against all of our interests, and it's a much better idea to keep it very heavily focused here. So we do want unfair representation in St. Louis, but it shouldn't be solely representation of St. Louis.
So I mean, I don't mean to make this sound conclusatory or in a conclusionary fashion, but I feel like we would be remiss if we. So is this meeting with the advisory board?
Yeah. So
Is that? I mean, I don't want us to walk away and be like, oh, we'll talk about this again soon, or like, oh, well, this we just need to keep kind of discussing this and we'll get on the same page. It seems to me like this is something that needs.
No, I think it still explicitly needs to be addressed.
A meeting with this very purpose
Yeah,
where we need to walk through all of these things.
Yeah.
And I don't know if
That's fine.
it doesn't sound like that's. Yeah, I mean, it needs to be something that people agree to, right? You can't just be like, all right, we're forcing people in against their will.
I mean, Ramin clearly needs to be there as well.
Yes.
So we have to make sure it's when he's back.
Yeah. And I don't. I'm only out of love for the growth of this organization am I saying this. I don't mean to inject my presence or anything like that. I'd be happy to help or add my 2 cents or mediate or do whatever.
You
But
have a lot more right to have a say at this table than you give yourself credit for sometimes.
well, I want to be very explicit about the fact that you guys have just for sheer history, you all put more blood, sweat, and tears into this than me, and I think that I would be remiss if I didn't acknowledge that. And so, I do appreciate that, and I.
But I guess going forward, do we?
Yeah.
I think, getting like a time to sit down and talk over it makes sense. I guess I'm a little bit. I think going into the advisory board meeting and just airing our grievances isn't productive and is probably would harm the organization as a whole, because I don't know, I just don't think it'd be very professional unless we really pointed things we wanted to bring up with them. I think it would mostly just kind of raise red flags and be a little bit confusing.
But I think it's appropriate to raise red flags.
No, yeah,
this is
agree,
the
but I
whole
think they
point
should
when
be-
we're arguing about. Like, there is
Yeah.
a problem that needs to be fixed.
But I guess
And-
so. What exactly would we bring up to them with that?
Like, I would just tell them, like I said, like I think there have been some situations where it's been inappropriate, that type of relationship that's been established, and I need help in well, it's not even I need help. Like, this is what I see the problem. I can help if you guys want me to, but like, this is going to be the challenges of the next St. Louis chapter leadership or whatever. And I want to say that it's important for me that there's a system set up that the stakeholders can, in some indirect way, approve any like decisions that are being made without having to go to them constantly, without having the president worry about like we just wrote the network a $10,000 check. Like, that's a sixth of our budget.
Right.
Like, that's kind of a big deal. And like,
how is that going to get paid back?
how, like, just establishing that, like, stuff like that, or like, it'll be different going on where we won't have this like continual cash problem, but just like stuff like that, or like even this like cross of people, like, it's still, I think, like, I trust you guys, but I still think it's a little dicey, and like, this stuff takes time, and we're not doing ourselves a service by minimizing the total time we could be spent on each of them by having people share their time on both of them.
Yeah.
So it's just like, I think simple structures that we just don't have.
Yeah.
And these are the type of thing. This is like the plea or the statement I'd make to the board.
Can we?
And like with Cotrano and Emre, we're like talking offline to try to have this like stuff established where Emre can just be like, okay, I'm gonna do this. Like, who can help out with this? And blah blah blah. Hit the ground.
I think Emory should remain one of the strong advisors in making sure this comes to fruition. I think it makes sense to probably have, of a group of 6 to 8 advisors, 2 of them be St. Louis people. So we have to be very careful about how we do this, because I'm worried that, like, I think Emory and Dean Shapiro are probably the 2 that are best poised.
I think, I think it's important to identify, like, mutually identify stakeholders that need to be in the room, so that like one side is not unfairly supported. Before that, I think we need to agree upon. It seems like there needs to be a purpose agreed upon before that takes place. So, like, I think that we need to have some sort of like a mission statement for this meeting or set of meetings that we're planning, where it's like, what question are we trying to answer? And it needs to be really specific of like, we are trying to figure out an organizational structure for, and it might be multiple things, like an organizational structure for the entire Sling Health Network, such that the St. Louis chapter and its historical presence in the organization is not undermined. Something along those lines, right? Like, I don't know. I think that we need to all, I think whoever is like involved in this meeting needs to agree upon this statement. And I think that the people, maybe the people in this room, or, all or some, need to figure out what that statement is before we start figuring out who the stakeholders are that would be making that decision. Because again, clarity is the name of the game. That's the reason that I think that we're all here right now, is that things have not been explicitly clear. And they may have seemed clear, but they've diverged, like the opinions on them have diverged. Sorry, I didn't mean to.
No, I think that's right. I think, I guess that's more of what I mean. I guess right now I don't have a really strong understanding of, like, I guess what would be brought up in the board meeting. And I definitely trust your concerns and trust how you bring it up. But I guess just kind of like, even just that one sentence, like, this is kind of what we want to get out of bringing this up, not only for the committee but also for the sake of the board meeting. I think it would just provide some like clarity to me about like what we want to get out of that conversation. And it doesn't need to be super specific, but
it'll fairly provide context for people
Sure.
when you're in that meeting.
And I think if we bring this up in the advisory board meeting without any context and without any suggestion of how we plan to move forward and resolve things, it is simply going to freak out a lot of people that are heavily invested in our group. And many of the concerns are appropriate, but also things that we've been thinking a ton about how to solve. And so to falsely imply that we have no idea what we're doing and that we're like being, I mean, I understand that you accused me of being unethical about how we handle funding, which may not have been exactly the intent, but like we try so hard to figure out the most ethical ways to distribute everything to like not cause any red flags and to be very clear. So like we don't want the advisory board to come away thinking that like something is shady going on when that's frankly not the case.
Yeah, no, and I think that's very true. We don't want to cause that discord, and at the same time, Ian's concerns and the chapter concerns still need to be addressed, and it again goes back to clarity. Like things have not been clear, and so people have interpreted things different ways, and I think that even you've even said, and it seems pretty clear to me that there's still a piece of faith that's like I don't think you were trying to do this, but it really came off that you were trying to do this, and it was in a very compelling way that wasn't trustworthy, and so I think.
I mean, it certainly feels like the underlying assumption sometimes, intended or not, is that what I do as leading the network is inherently something that's aggressive and or a bad idea and or out to hurt St. Louis. And I try so hard to make none of those things the case. So I hope that we can at least move to a baseline of thinking that I'm trying to come from a logical position and then trying to figure out what's the most logical way forward based on that.
Mm-hmm. Fair. Okay, so I'll work on trying to establish more verbosely. I mean, this is on the agenda anyways, but
We should figure
I
out
can
when
share.
Robin's
I
in
can share
town
with you guys.
and meet before that advisory board
Yes.
meeting if we can. My defense is
Yeah, I
on
can
Friday
find it.
next week, meaning like Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday next week would be much better.
Yeah,
Which is Thursday, Friday.
or just the Monday, Tuesday before
Yeah,
the
that's
20.
not
Or
Wednesday.
when are you out of town?
I'm leaving on the 21st, but
Okay.
I can Skype at night or something if I need to.
I mean, this is something that I think everybody needs to, the people need to be in the room. And I think honestly it's going to be pretty exhausting, and it might be the kind of thing that's like we should plan, or I would suggest planning an in-person like 20-minute, 30-minute, hour-long meeting to just even figure out that mission statement for the meetings, and then start to kind of create agendas of like how we're going to, and I'll be the first to admit, like, I'm a pretty overkill person. I think it's one of the reasons that I contribute a lot to a finance department and accounting department that doesn't have a lot of structure right now. But this seems like something that needs a lot of attention. And, I know that everybody's busy, but I think that like having a specific meeting where you just figure out the mission statement, taking some time off to gather thoughts and gather defenses, obviously, or not obviously, but honestly, and then coming back together and like really hammering out all the things we've talked about tonight is really necessary. I mean, and it may be included once that mission statement's figured out, then figure out stakeholders, who's going to be at these meetings, when they're going to take place, et cetera, et cetera. Just get all that stuff in a row, and then have a marathon of like some pretty tough meetings. Like, I would be honestly very surprised if they're not tiring and exhausting, because there's going to be emotions involved, there's going to be history involved, and yeah.
Mhm.
Sorry, I'm
Sure. Yeah, for sure. And I think, for sure, like having old people help us even understand that process.
Yeah. But being
will be
clear, I
very
mean, I think
valuable
you
as
made a
well.
very sorry.
No.
I mean, I think you make a very good point. Like, we don't want to freak out these people that are our longtime advisors and some of our best advocates
And funders.
and funders. And so that's all the more reason to have this purpose in place of like what their roles are, right? Like so that they understand like they're not here because we're a bunch of kids and we don't know what we're doing. They're here because they have valuable experience to help us advise a situation that we have background on, we have information on, but just to kind of add their 2 cents. And if they're voting stakeholders on this decision, make that very clear. I don't know. I'm just kind of going off.
I guess I've been fortunate enough to come into this like a little bit later than you two, and like kind of reap the benefits of all the trust you two and everyone else has built within the WashU system. And yeah, I don't know. It seems like there's always the risk of that trust kind of being pulled back, and it seems like as soon as that gets, or we'd be weakened significantly if that trust is pulled back. But I mean, granted, if there's concerns that you think warrants like a little bit of a pullback in trust, they should be raised. But I guess I just want to understand what they would be.
Yeah. I mean, I think they're on our side, and they think it would be cool, and like, of course, WashU loves to be the center of anything they can be, but like, I'm not too like, I don't think they're gonna like blow up and be like, absolutely not, right? Like, I don't think they're gonna do that, right? But I think it
depends on the individual. I think Quatrano has very directly told me after that first advisory board meeting and then in person that he doesn't want anything to do with the national network.
Yeah, and that's fine. He wants to support the chapter, right?
And that's fine, but that means that he is explicitly not an appropriate person to help guide how to structure a national
Absolutely, okay, that's fine. But I think also, like, this is a St. Louis advisory board too, so like that's part of the confusion, right? And part of this thing, but just starting, and so like we just got to start, and I'm not out to have like character assassinations or to sink any of these ideas or of the network or anything. I just think that like we need help on it.
Mm-hmm.
Those are my intentions.
And those ground rules need to be laid. Like it sounds so elementary school, but it's like
for sure,
like
for sure
that needs to be explicitly said when we walk in the door for the first time of like no one, like we have to abide by like no one being out to like assassinate characters, et cetera, et cetera. Like it has to be all for the purpose of this this mission, whatever this mission is going to be.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that people will deviate from that, and people will get called out on deviating from that. It's gonna be a tough. I don't know. It's gonna be a tough meeting or set of meetings.
Yeah. So I'll for next week try to just like put together some talking points at least, and to try to craft that message. And if it's something that seems off base, then we can meet for it. But I really think they can help us even structure that, like even to talk about like what are we going to talk about, what needs to happen, like
this is the
starting
St. Louis Advisory Board you're talking about?
Yeah. Like I just think that having them even help us get started with starting is valuable.
I agree. And this is obviously going to be something that's very heavy on me and Ramin in particular, but everybody else as well, trying to get this sorted out.
Mm-hmm. Sure. Okay. Everyone okay?
Thankfully, I think Ramin and I are mostly on the same page, but I think that we really have things to talk about.
Where do you guys go for getting a notary to sign something? We're transferring.
Blackwell.
Okay. Just like
Julie is a notary.
Or there should be some all across campus.
Yeah.
Just pretend it's for something research-wise.
Oh, really?
Academic
Don't tell them that it's for a nonprofit that's external to WashU.
Do they have to read it? No.
Maybe Hush is, but they have one here at 4240. No.
Yeah.
Isn't the
Julie Bowman
okay
at 4240 and Hush Blackwell is a notary.
Okay.
We're transferring IP to Eurostat.
Okay. Cool. Awesome.
Oh, nice. Let me know if you need, because we might need to audit their stuff, like if they got fixed assets from us,